I'm Justin Arnett Graham.
And my name is Nariba Shepherd. And this is Terms of Service.
I love that has become a tradition from
I have to say it now because when I don't do it, you're like, the energy's not there.
I said that one time. One time.
Was it?
I think I said it one time, but I meant it multiple. so I'm like,
see, I got the message.
No, it's okay. Retroactively?
Yes.
Okay,
I was like, retrospectively? No. That's not what I want.
got you. How are you doing? Good afternoon.
Yes, it is the afternoon now.
Yeah.
I'm doing fairly okay. I'm very excited about our sit down today.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also sort of exhausted.
Yeah.
Because I got my work schedule emailed to me. And, it's Oktoberfest, in the future past. So
that's correct.
Working at a beer and cider garden it's a time.
It is an absolute
It's a time. I don't know why we give drunk people nails and hammers to put it in a stump, but we do it. It's happening.
I mean...
But there's none of us walking around, so the liability part of it is very low. Because we're all, in a hut. So it's not like we can see what people are doing.
I love how specific this answer is.
I mean, you got to protect your neck.
I mean, these are the facts.
But where are you at? How's it going?
It's going well. It's going better than well. It's going triumphantly.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm feeling a vibe.
I mean, with those sunglasses.
I mean, you know what? Yeah, can't see shit, but I'm looking good. So it is what it is, and I'm not mad about it.
It is a fashion-forward day.
Thank you so very much. Mm-hmm. It's all black all the time, which everyone knows who is familiar with my aesthetic, but it is what it is. And I stand by it. I
mean, I'm just saying that when we worked an event together, you were wearing a jean jacket in the middle of a sunny day.
And ain't nobody talking about that. So that's entirely fine.
I'm just saying.
I'm like, it's okay. But...
You've committed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just like I am committed to my enthusiasm for... this episode.
Okay, all right.
See, I'm
lead into it.
I'm leaning all the way into it. So, as we always like to do, Kristen, I do not want to speak for you, but I am so enthralled that you have decided to join us.
Yeah.
And everyone, please welcome the wonderful Kristen Kaza.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
you.
Yes. Hi, Kristen. How are you?
Hi, I'm fabulous.
Great. Well, so...
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Your spiel.
My spiel. My pitch on me.
Yeah. If you had to tell you about you.
True.
I feel like it's changed, recently, so we'll give the most hyper update of me on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My name is Kristen Gaza. This is my radio voice. I am fondly known by some in Chicago as Chicago's party mom, as a party producer in Chicago for 15 years, and having a very maternal approach to space making, and have very recently expanded that maternal title to being a mother of twins. I gave birth to twin girls. Thank you,
yes,
Jade and Nova.
That's so exciting.
Yes, very exciting. And they've only been home 2 weeks, so it's really I gotta give a shout out to my mom and my wife who are with the babies right now, so I could come here and continue my fabulous lifestyle that no one said I would have once I had twins. And I'd like to say that I am actively already proving them wrong.
Yes. You know what? You gotta keep moving.
Energy.
Absolutely. I mean, what am I going to be a different person now? I'm not. It's funny. People have been like, well, how are you going to keep, throwing parties? I'm like, well, I'm going to figure it out, obviously. Yeah. Also, they sleep all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, right now. But, you can't do everything the same, obviously, and you figure that out. But it's something I've tried to keep reminding myself is that it's temporary, and it's gonna, at least this time, right now, where they're at, is gonna evolve, and we just, we keep on moving. So, mom is a big part of my identity, but having a a matriarchal role, specifically in the LGBT community for a long time. That's something that I think has like influenced and prepared me in certain ways for being a mom. And I think the things that probably people would know me for are Slow-Mo, which is Chicago's, I believe, longest running queer dance party, 11 years. Slow jams.
Amazing.
For queer fam.
When I moved to Chicago 9 years ago and change, that was like one of the first things that I ever went to. Yay. And I can't remember exactly the location. I don't think that place
was it the Whistler?
Is it open still?
Yeah.
It was a really small.
Whistler.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, small with a stage. And
yes,
that's
okay.
it.
So
Chris is like,
that was like the first thing. No, I'm bad at
We
like
did parties all over.
location.
So that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, because I moved here from Vermont.
Hey.
I know.
I didn't get to say that. I spiel 10th generation Vermonter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
We got the
okay.
Vermont
I was
thing.
like, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, we're going to move right into the background once we're wrapping up.
Right,
Here.
and then-
Amazing. Yes.
And so the only thing that I had in college was, oh my God, it was on Friday nights once a month in the venue space in South Burlington. Why is the name of it just gone from my brain?
At Higher Ground.
Higher Ground, First Friday.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was called. And that was like, I was like, oh my God, this is it. Like, blah, blah. And then I come to Chicago and they're like, we're shitting on it every day of the week, baby. Gay shit everywhere. And I was like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, and that's the best. That's my favorite thing about the party is when people who are new to the city are trying to find their way, trying to find their community. And then I can't tell you how many times people have said it was like coming home. And it's huge, you know? And I think especially coming to a new place, a new city in general, but then also if you're, you know, trying to find community, you know, based on like maybe a marginalized identity. And so that's really special, like having people still share to this day that they met their family there, their friends, their partners, their lovers. I mean, my wife and I met at Slow-Mo at my own party.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Alexis and I met at Slow-Mo 6 years ago, and then we were married with children now.
Yeah.
We're not the only ones. There's tons of people who have...
That's beautiful.
Yes, met and then had Slow-Mo DJs DJ their weddings.
Oh, yeah.
So it's, you know, it's really beautiful, and I didn't know... I really didn't plan to. It started as a monthly party. It started as a monthly party at the Whistler in this small space, all vinyl. Tess, DJ Tess, was the co-founding. She was my co-founder and founding DJ, and she would play all vinyl, which is a real tall order for 5 hours.
Yeah.
So that eventually evolved, of course, but it, you know. It was just really special. It's this small little space, and when you walked into that room at the Whistler, you just were hit by it. It was very hot too, but it was this small little 100 capacity space with stage, and it was really special. And we have, you know, since let that stay in the past pre-pandemic, and now we're in this new era of whatever this is right now, this endemic. And the Whistler's sister venue, Sleeping Village, which is also a concert venue. We've done different shows there because we don't just do dance parties. We've done concerts, you know, Millennium Park last year, done things all over the city. And we just did
That was sick.
Did you go to Divas?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Sick.
That was the highlight of my life.
Bravo.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So to clarify what we're talking about is the summer concert series in Millennium Park in Chicago, which is really special. I think the best example of like unifying Chicago, this free concert series. Yeah. And it's been my goal of like my, you know, 15 years of nightlife is like, and live entertainment was to do a show in Millennium Park. So it was their first concert since the pandemic. So first show in Millennium Park in 2 years was my show, which was called Divas Through the Decades. I'm Every Woman, Divas Through the Decades. Yes. And because Slow-Mo, it really pays homage to and celebrating women in music starting in the 70s to today, we did a dedication to women in music and went through the eras of the 70s to today, of course, starting with Diana Ross and all the way to, you know, Robin. And Kenya, who's an amazing singer, composer, composer, pianist, put together like a 10-person band. We had all these like guest vocalists that came out, and we did the show in Millennium Park, and it was just so special because it was the first slow-mo in a year and a half. So bringing people together that in this free outdoors, all ages, people coming from all over the city, people who didn't know anything about slow-mo. It was also our 10-year anniversary, so it was a wonderful way to celebrate that.
So it was multifaceted.
A culmination.
Yes, culmination. Thank you. That is the word I was looking for.
Yes.
But I just have to, because
we went so far away from what is your sign?
No, you're entirely fine. But we have to rewind it back because we want to give you the proper intro that you deserve.
Right. Okay, we're rewinding it back. We already were getting into stories. That's the thing. I'll just start with stories.
No, we're part of the problem.
No, it's okay.
It was like a story that came out of a
you want to share the stories. We want to hear those stories. So I'm like, this is absolutely amazing. Nariba.
Yes.
Okay.
But what's your sign?
Okay.
Give us the rising. Give us that moon.
I'll give it to you.
Give us a chart because I'm loving the energy when people know the chart.
Yes.
I could tell you the things. Okay, I'm all pretty much all water and earth. So I'm a Cancer sun, Capricorn rising.
Yes.
Yes, and Virgo moon.
Oh my God.
And my Taurus and Venus.
Okay.
So it's all earth and water pretty much.
Yeah.
And Mercury and Mars are both in Cancer.
Oh my God.
Oh, we went Mercury and Mars.
Yeah.
Oh my
I think that's the
God.
first time we've ever done that far.
My Venus is in Pisces, and it's my downfall.
Oh.
I feel like because I'm too
why?
Aren't
romantic.
Pisces emotional?
I'm
Yeah.
I want like romance novel level shit to happen in my life, but I'm like a basic bitch. But I'm like desperately like, give me that romance. But like I'm attracted to assholes. But like, I love my boyfriend so much, Andrew. I love him so much.
I didn't mean
but
you.
He's an asshole,
saying
and
you.
I love
A
him.
good asshole.
So yes,
maybe, yeah.
but okay, so my reaction to your Virgo moon and Capricorn rising is just because
Virgo moon, Capricorn. Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
it's like a foundation for Cancer to like actually fulfill all of the tasks that they want.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, amazing.
It's like high functioning empathy. That's what I say.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. Because like, Cancer on its own is like, people will be surprised. I don't think it's surprising at all in a Cancer. It's like the maternal, again, speaking of motherhood, like the mother sign.
Oh,
so,
110, yeah.
I think it makes sense, but I don't think we'll ask my girlfriends and my wife, but I don't think I'm that moody. Like, I don't think that I...
Okay. Well, that's because you have the structure on both sides.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, no. Ruby, another Cancer, another Vermonter.
Yes.
I love her so much, but I think our friendship works because I will always be a voice of reason. Because she will be like, I've decided this is what I'm going to do and I want to do it. And I'm like, you know what? Go for it. However, if some shit happens, I'm going to let you know that maybe you're at just a little boundary. Yeah. But I love her so much and I'm excited to get mail from her soon.
Mail. I love mail.
I know.
Okay,
That's it. That's all I got.
Well, so every time we do this, I just keep like sinking deeper and deeper into my seat, being like, I'm learning so much.
Yeah, but you know so much that I don't know. So
Fair.
we're learning from each other.
And I absolutely adore that.
Like, I know how to send emails now.
Yeah. That's an important
And I am
skill.
so glad if that is one thing that we have learned from one another is like you can hit reply all, and it is
A couple of
best.
recordings ago, Justin, I showed him how many unread emails I have, and he almost died.
Wrong move.
Anxiety.
Wrong move.
But I was like, but I'd be opening yours, so.
So for those of us that follow terms of service here, we can identify that is not the full truth here.
I mean, most of it, like
Eventually,
95% of them.
she does open all of it.
It might not be on time, but I'm always there when you call. We can't sing that
What's your
song.
sign?
I'm an Aries.
Okay. Fiery.
Yeah, with a Sag moon.
What's your rising?
Virgo. It's the only reason.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. It's the only thing holding me down because I always just want to burn shit to the ground. And everyone's like, but maybe we shouldn't. And I'm like, you know what? I don't have bail money. So yeah, maybe we shouldn't.
It's fair.
Growth.
That is fair.
Hashtag growth.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like almost a self-actualized Aries.
Yep.
I'm
Elijah,
almost there.
another Aries.
Shout out to Elijah.
Elijah, my co-founder, my sister, my friend in Reunion, which I'm sure we'll talk. We have to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
The most Aries of Aries, the epitome of Aries. But I would say again another another growth moment. A person who is incredibly brilliant, but yet fiery, but has evolved in that fire.
Oh yeah,
I think that's what it's all about, right?
It's about growth and like seeing it and
and
making the change.
Yeah, honoring what is really wonderful about those things, those qualities that you have, and then where they're holding you back. My dad, I use this quote that he says a lot, which is that your greatest strengths are also your greatest liabilities. Mm-hmm. So it's the idea that like not your weaknesses, it's just that sometimes it can hold you back in certain ways.
Oh, yeah.
It can also in other times be your strength.
Yes.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
The size.
So
And now we can fast forward back into the empire that you have built with.
But pause.
For the beverage?
Yes, because I would love to choose you. Okay. And this wonderful, wonderful beverage offering is coming from our friend Cheyenne English, also known as Miss Perfect Pour on Instagram. And this is Justified. Anyway.
Him for him?
Yeah, right. And so it is blackberry, rosemary, maple, cardamom, and lemon. So you're going to be looking for some woodsy spice here and entirely spirit-free.
Oh my gosh, and maple. I mean, we know something about maple.
Listen.
The Vermonters know. My family makes
the Vermonters, yes.
Yeah. My cousins are still carrying that tradition on from my uncles and grandfather, yeah.
I walked the fuck out of a restaurant here because they said they had maple syrup coming out with a French toast and it was not maple syrup.
Nope.
And I threw my money down and I left. I didn't even eat my food.
So you understand. So this is the thing. People think Vermonters are crazy for this, but listen, you come to the Midwest. People thought I was crazy. I would bring maple syrup with me to breakfast. And or I'd look it up and be like, does that restaurant have maple syrup?
The actual maple syrup,
because
though.
they look at you like you're like, if they're like,
I feel like I'm going to sound so
I'm not
ignorant.
sure, and then you're like, oh, you don't have it.
Yeah,
you
no.
know if you had the maple syrup.
It tastes different.
It's expensive.
It is.
So
it's worth it.
It's worth
I've realized just through our work together, Nuiba, it's like when I think of Vermont, I think of two things.
Okay.
Where are they? Oh, I'm so excited to find out.
Well, one of which is this amazing chef by the name of Nick Lacasse. I love him so much. Hello, Nick. He is doing his thing as he always has, and he continues to kill it. And then also, I think of Super Troopers.
Okay, so I didn't watch Super Troopers.
It's not,
until
one
after I left
is not
Vermont.
like the other.
So I didn't
I don't think I've
know.
seen it.
I watched it when I moved here to Chicago, and when I started watching, I was like, "Oh my god, that's in Vermont!" And then I was like, "It's just a bunch of like stoner cops."
Yeah, I mean,
essentially.
it's full on stoner comedy, but the backdrop is
Beautiful.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
And the comedy is it's there.
giving 2008
I was just gonna say,
like lens. You have to
yes,
like
right.
put on that lens.
Oh, it's
to
not giving
enjoy it.
2022.
No,
we wouldn't be
no.
having that stoner cop comedy.
No.
And especially not watching it.
No,
I went
not at all.
back
This
to-
was back in the day, so a TBT moment.
True.
So,
2000s were an interesting time.
It's a different country in time. It's like literally a different country. I'm like, what were the rights here? Do we have laws? Nothing. Nothing existed.
I mean, some had more rights back then than they do today, which is fucking insane.
I went back to Vermont last year for a wedding. One of my college friends / my like best friend got married, and his wedding was right outside of Waterbury. No, Sugarbush.
Well, spent.
Yeah, And we went to brunch. We went to
Can't wait to
brunch.
feel those DMs.
And it's
That'll
gonna
be
happen.
exciting.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And I went inside to grab something, and I was like, coming back out, and everyone at the table I was sitting at like got up, and I was like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "There's a fucking bear." Like right there, and it just like walked up to like one of the tables.
Was that meant to rhyme?
And people didn't know.
Well, it did though.
Damn.
And I'm here for it.
And people were like, "Yep, this is regular. This like." He
I
just
don't think
comes
that's
around
regular.
here all the
That- oh my
time.
goodness.
Yes. And then this like 17-year-old like busser comes out, and he's like, I'm just gonna
Shoo.
follow him and make sure that he's like gone. He like apparently goes into the trash and stuff a lot. But when I told my like friends, I was like, yeah, you know, Vermont's like in a lot of places still very rural, but the sense of community is always strong. They weren't expecting like bears to be part of the community.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it's just, I miss it so much. But I
Same.
always say that like Vermont is a good place to like raise a family,
Yes.
but it's not a great place to like do all your dreams,
Yeah.
which is why I
Would you
moved
say
here
that it's
to
not
Chicago.
ideal to grow a family?
I mean, I
Or
think
is
it's
that-
amazing because it, just nature, there's such
Yeah.
a value in like being
Yeah.
outdoors and quality of life. I mean, it depends what you're looking for. It's also
Yeah.
one of the whitest places in the
I
country,
mean,
you know,
right.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's a factor for some people, and that's
Yeah.
real.
Because I mean, I've literally just always wondered that, and
But not entirely. I know what
There
you're
are pockets
there's
of it.
pockets where you find your
Well, I was in
people.
Burlington.
Exactly.
So it
right.
was like a little bit more diverse.
Right.
But like going snowboarding in Sugarbush,
Right,
like
right.
I'm like, oh, it's just me today.
I am representing for everyone.
every time you say
Sugarbush?
Sugarbush, I think of Nutbush.
What's that?
What's love got to do with it? Yeah, Ike and Tina Turner, specifically Tina Turner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
All the
that is not a
memories.
tangent that we're gonna go
VH1,
down. Just-
living in
I'm
my
just saying,
brain.
it's just like in the studio, Nutbush. And
Nutbush.
I'm just gonna leave it right
Okay.
there. So
Am I gonna have to rewatch that? Probably.
yes, you are. It's a moment.
Angel Bass, it's incredible. In that.
So
I just
good.
watched it again last year.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
What's
don't
love got
know.
to do with it?
Yes.
Oh, I'll watch
How
it
much
right
did
now.
you cry?
It cried.
Like 100% of the. See, I feel like emotionally, I'm not ready for that rewatch yet
Yeah.
because
That's fair.
So I went to the Selena tribute concert that they did in Millennium Park.
Oh,
This
yeah.
like last Friday
Oh,
for my
cool.
friend's like bachelorette party.
Okay.
Shout out to Shelly, she's married. Rochelle, I love you.
Congratulations,
Anyway,
Sharon.
congrats.
Yes.
But I cried 100% of the entire time we were there. From the moment I got there, it was just like the overwhelming love and sense of community from everyone who was there. And like, we had to eventually leave because she was like, you are literally running out of tears. And I felt bad because I was like, we're going to do this thing for you. You love Selena. I love Selena. Like, let's go do it. But she literally had to like walk my ass out of there because
She's like, it's time for you to go.
She was like, I don't know if you're having a good time or not. I was like, I can just feel everyone.
Yeah.
And
You're like, I'm just super emotional and I feel a lot of feelings.
yeah. And I think that's like full circle back to how being at a lot of your events felt like when you had slow-mo at the Chicago Athletic Association for New Year's.
Oh, wait, were you at that?
I was there.
Oh, yes, I am. Oh, my God. The Slow Motel. It's really
It
proud
was
of that name.
so
Yeah.
good.
Yes, as you should.
I'm
Yeah.
so happy you got to experience
Yeah.
that. That was, I mean, in that ballroom, and I think like that's a great example of like taking over spaces, especially, which I'm sure we'll talk about more of like us not having a lot of our own spaces. And that was, really great because they had just opened and so they didn't have anything booked yet. It's very expensive. It's the white ballroom or whatever they call it. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And then we got to just like bring all these, these queers into the
yeah,
space and the fireworks over.
It was
But-
beautiful.
But not only that, but like very vibrant in their presentation, their identity.
Yeah.
And there's always something happening and engaging you
Yes.
and the performances.
Yeah.
It was
So like it becomes and we will definitely get into this more as this conversation evolves. It's less of a party, but like more of like a movement.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that that's absolutely beautiful. One thing that you're very welcome. One thing that I want to rewind back to before we get too far, but I'm loving this. How did you get to Chicago?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Vermont, so I went to Columbia College, and
What did you study?
Marketing and theater. A little bit of a theater background.
Okay.
Yes.
Theater.
Which I feel, you know, with events and is like, you know, that.
You're putting it to work.
Exactly. It's theatrical.
Yeah.
Being on stage and having to speak in front of people, of course, got a little bit of training for that. But I knew I needed to live in a city, you know, I love Vermont and I still do. And I loved growing up there, but it's just, you know, it's just too small for me. It's so beautiful. And I'm very, you know, grateful that I got to have such a relationship with nature.
Yep.
And I can't wait to bring my little babies.
Yes!
Home. I'm dreaming of that, like bringing them go apple picking. But, you know, so I came to Chicago and I haven't left. I didn't plan to be here for 2 decades, but I've been here 19 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I just didn't leave, you know, and I work with lots of artists and I've like mentored many, and I see lots of people come and go, sometimes come back to Chicago. And something I always tell people is like, you can leave, you can always come back to Chicago. It is one of those places that go explore, allow yourself to evolve, because it can be hard. A lot of folks in especially like creative roles to feel like you've hit a ceiling, especially if you're a performer, you're in live you're in any kind of entertainment. But I did it. I didn't leave. I stayed. I always wanted to go and live somewhere else, and I've talked about it, but I have a very interesting relationship to Chicago as like my long-term college girlfriend, and we're still together, and we love that, and we're very comfortable, and there's the nostalgia, but there's the things that continue to drive me crazy. It'll get better and then it comes back, but it like fits.
That is such a good way to phrase it.
Yes.
Long-term college girlfriend.
It's really what it is after 2 decades. And you know, my wife and I have talked about leaving, but I think I'm happy to be here. We're so lucky to have an incredible village of people to support us while we're entering our parenting era, and you know, just see what the future brings. But that's what brought me to Chicago is college, and then I started throwing parties when I was 21, like right out of the gates, really. So it's been, and I'm 37, so it's been almost 16 years, like in the industry.
Yes.
So I'm so fascinated by this, because just being in a city that you're not familiar with, do you believe that you started throwing parties as a means of connection, or like where?
I love that question.
Yeah.
So, actually, there's a specific reason when I really started it as like, you know, falling into it more as like a role as a party promoter and professionally, which is I was producing a documentary called Fish Out of Water, which was and so we were working on that from like 2007 to 2009, and totally different time for LGBT rights.
Right.
And it was a film by a filmmaker named Kai Dickens, long friend of mine, about the Bible and homosexuality, and specifically these what are called like the clobber passages that are used from the Bible to make a case against gay people. And I fell into like producing that with her, and part of our fundraising strategy was this party that I threw, my very first party, and it was a like kind of flash fundraiser, $5 cover, and that cover went to supporting the film. And it was in the back of the Holiday Club, and this
Yes.
in this little room, which is actually a really cool room in the back. If you might not even know it's there if you were only ever went in the main room space.
That's
Is that
where
Irving,
they did.
Irving and Sheffield?
Yeah, Sheridan.
Sheridan, that's right.
That's
right.
where my friend threw my viewing party for when I was on Guys Grocery Games.
Oh my! Wait, okay. Can we just put a pin in something?
Okay.
We have to talk about Guy Fieri.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious.
No,
Did you know about my Guy Fieri?
No, I don't know
actually
anything
have
about
a very unironic love for him, and we're going to get to it.
Yes.
Okay. But we're talking about role play. So my first party was called Role Play. And it was costume themed. So you would come and whatever the theme was. And I was working in marketing for Whole Foods at the time. I went right out of college working for Whole Foods in Evanston. I was like their marketing specialist, which back in the day before Whole Foods was owned by, ruined by being owned by Amazon, it was a totally different company to work for. I loved working for Whole Foods. And they had a marketing specialist like working in the store to really make sure there was like community impact, and you had a budgets that went to impact in the community and in the store. I was like 20,
like literally a block away.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I was 21 with like working with 3 budgets, managing 4 people, being so hungover after going to parties or throwing my own. Coming in, I was like in charge of like the cooking class when we used to have classes, and I'd just like get a slice of pizza,
Oh my God.
Get some pizza and just like some coffee and go in there and try and like get myself together. And the sign maker, which is like the graphic designer and chalkboard art and everything, was my friend Gertie, and they would hand draw the role play flyers and we'd upload them to MySpace, and the party was promoted through MySpace. It exists in a MySpace vacuum. That's where I don't even know, like I can't even really remember how, but because there's no way to access it. But and I have no like photos, or I don't have anything left from it. But anyone that knows me or knows
it's still
out
there. The internet is forever.
It's true. I mean, I'm like, give me that password. But so my first party was role play, and the themes were like hats, and you just had to come in a wild hat. I mean, it was so silly. And Alinka, who now goes by Alinka, but Elena, my friend Elena, who's actually a very well-known international DJ. I didn't even know she played, but she played the music. I had a little point and shoot camera, take photos of people, and that was my first party. And simultaneously work for Whole Foods, and I went to work for the Reader, and we established the Reader. I had gone through a bunch of changes. Actually,
and even recently,
bankruptcy, yes, and I came back to the Reader 2 years ago when they were purchased again and working toward becoming a nonprofit. So I actually worked at the Reader in 2 eras, and so that and my first job in Chicago was with Time Out Chicago, when Time Out was a magazine.
Wow.
It was a weekly magazine. It was
not
awesome.
This food hall that's like right.
And there was no food hall. It was a weekly magazine.
The flyers and the free flyers and
it was like a
no, even before that.
Even
before that, you had a subscription. I mean, they had a TV section and a sports section, and it would say what was going on that week. And there was a gay and lesbian section in there. And that's how I learned so much of the gay things, is like coming out when I was 20 and finding places to go. And so I interned there, and then worked there part-time before going to Whole Foods. So, a lot of media experience, did events with them, and then was at the Reader. And then I left the Reader when it was sold to Sun Times, and then I started my company, No Small Plans Productions, which is 10 November. 10 years.
Happy anniversary!
Thank you. So it's been the last few years being in the industries that were in hospitality and live entertainment and nightlife. Like, woo, we've really been through it,
Yeah.
But we're still here, and getting really creative with how to navigate those times. And we were talking about slow-mo earlier. My party, so to fast forward later, I started slow-mo in 2011, and that just came from a desire to like be in a more central, like an intimate space with queer people, and specifically queer women. Like, I was single at the time, and I'm like, I just want to listen to Janet Jackson,
Yep.
Yeah.
And really, that's where it started. I was listening to like That's the Way Love Goes on my Discman. I think I still was using a Discman at the time. Very old school. I still got the newspaper.
Was it on repeat? Because
and I was like, I want to go somewhere like with good lighting, first of all, and I want to sit in a booth. I don't want to be like cramped. I want to, and I want to enjoy this experience. And so I started slow-mo, and originally, like, that tagline was slow-mo slow jams. Why am I forgetting this?
Okay.
So other people would be able to know it. For homos and their fans. And so there's the idea of like always wanting people to feel, and now it's slow jams for queer fan, but always wanting to feel that anyone was welcome at this party. For me, it's always been more about like vibes and values, and the music is very, very, very important to this party.
It sets the mood.
Very much so. And, it creates, when you're talking earlier, and I know
it's also like the soul of an event.
A soul, exactly. Yeah. And, it really creates a different environment, and people respond to that. And I think it's that with the music. in addition to having it be a, you know, femme founded and ran space. And so you have what I call like the femergy. You feel that in the space, and people are very responsive to that. And that doesn't need to be limited just to women. And that's been really important to me, to make sure that it is not just like pigeonholed as that. Right. So that's, you know, I think a lot of times you start if you feel there's a need and you don't see it, you're usually onto something. So I did that because that's what I wanted. I wanted to just like be able to have a more intimate environment. I didn't like going out to the gay bars and boys' night. I never felt comfortable there. And I wanted to listen to more mid-tempo music and not this like high octane, high BPM dance music that I think a lot of people actually don't even really want to listen to either.
You just wanted a groove.
Yeah, a groove. And, you know, that's what I refer to as like being sensually queer. I want to be sensually queer. You know, I want to be able to like feel, you know, and people really feel themselves at slow-mo. It's like,
it's true.
They feel, and that's what we deserve that. You know, we get gassed up because it's hard out there.
It is.
It's real rough out there.
They really do,
especially lately.
Yeah.
And the party, through the time of being 11 years, we've seen so much. I mean, it feels like an innocent era before 2016. When things started, and not just with the election, but there was so much going on. And, you know, slow-mo would hit when there would be, just timing-wise, right after a tragedy, a death of an innocent black person, you know, and we're coming in and we're doing candles and we're having a moment for them. Like, it was over and over again. But also, David Bowie died. Prince died the day of slow-mo. So people, you know, as you can imagine.
You come in with that.
Yes.
Energy, but also you want it to be a sense of celebration.
Exactly. And that's what, you know, I think I realize it's like I would think like, oh my gosh, we need to take a whole moment of silence. We need to do a big thing. And then I get into that space and be like, oh, actually what people really want and need right now is to have this space that feels like they can exist and feel good and feel okay with that before going back into the bullshit and the difficulties and the challenges that can feel so overwhelming and inescapable outside of this like little environment that we've created.
Yes, that's beautiful, and I'm loving this conversation, but I have to ask you something very, very directly.
Yeah, of course.
Because we all know that it's not always roses out here, right? So, as a white woman in queer spaces and building out queer spaces, and correct me if I'm wrong, like when I say building out, please correct what, like, my vocabulary.
Well, I mean, I knew what you were saying.
Yeah, it's just like, because it's even more critical for like black, brown, like trans, you know, identifying individuals, right? So how, like, did you experience any sort of like
tension,
pushback, any like
yeah, and you know,
how was that for you?
I listen, I see at its best feedback is a gift.
Yes,
feedback is a gift if you are listening. And the party, you know, we played a lot of R&B, a lot of black rooted music. So over time, thinking about, you know, how we're making sure that investment is being reciprocated.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is fact, of course, right, being a white woman creating, like, or, you know, facilitating, I should say, these spaces, right? That's like an empirical fact. So it's about who's being brought in, who's being showcased. How are you telling the story and not just playing the music? So, for example, when we've featured an artist every month, I'm going to tell the story of Patrice Rushen and why Patrice Rushen is so important and maybe hasn't gotten the platform and the story told about how prolific of an artist this artist was, right? That she's like an incredible pianist and all these things that maybe people wouldn't know in general, right? So it's like, A, the history. History's always been really important with slow-mo. And 2, who is being invested in, and like over time being able to create that platform so that people are getting, not only artists are getting that visibility when they play the party, but also paid.
Yeah.
So the reason,
and who's like who it's being marketed towards
Totally.
and where it's being showcased and marketed to. Like,
Yeah,
all of
specifically
those
like the
things.
activation of it all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I want to make sure I'm like really speaking to your question, because I really am like grateful that you asked that, because I almost feel like, and sometimes when I've done interviews where we're talking about it, people don't, and it's important to talk about.
It is.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be like scary either. This is other kinds of like discourse that like we need to have, rather than
I
just
agree.
like having them in sideline conversations. So, it's been a learning opportunity. And for me, I want to make sure that the music and the culture is being celebrated, but it's about always knowing like when you're stepping in and when you're stepping back. And who else has agency. So part of the reason why with having this party at Sleeping Village as of late, it's been great, is because, yes, we are charging a ticket, but it's a sliding scale ticket. And so you can be empowered by which price ticket aligns with, where you're at financially, but also that revenue has allowed us to pay people better, and that's really important.
Yes.
So,
And then the fact that a lot of the spaces that you work in are accessible to people who have physical
Yep.
like needs that
Yes.
need to be met.
Exactly.
So I always like when flyers started coming out and people like started being like, we have wheelchair access and stuff like that. I was like, Slow-Mo has been doing that. So it's like you were living in the future in some respects.
Yeah, I think there was, thank you, I appreciate that. Like, there's an approach, it has evolved, and I think grown, if you're, like I said, if you're listening to strengthen that, but I think it has been rooted in that for a long time. And, when you're thinking about, you're never going to be able to, like I say, I don't ever call spaces safe spaces, because I can't identify what is safety for you, and it is too unpredictable. And quite frankly, I think it puts way too much expectation and pressure and responsibility on the space makers, whether that's like party promoters or whether that's the venue, to dictate what that safety is for you. And you're entering an unsafe environment. There's drugs, there's alcohol, it's crowded, it's dark, there's fog machines, there's whatever, there's people coming in with their stuff.
Yeah.
We can't call that, in my opinion, a safe space. That doesn't mean that there can't be a feeling of safety for people.
Yes.
Yes. I
So
also
it's
feel
an
like
important
safe
distinction.
space is this. It's
Umbrella term.
It's this umbrella
Yeah.
term that is, trying to truly encompass the framework of a dialogue that is supported by others.
Yeah.
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 Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that language, safety or inclusion or all these things have really just been very like commodified. And I'm just a big, like, in this whole conversation we're having, I think the important, like, an important thing to be anchored by is like action, not just words, right? And so when you
We've been talking about that all season long
where
so
can
far.
you see
Yes.
it?
Yeah.
And so with you're saying about if there was that tension, it's like to listen, but it's a fine line, because when you have something that's reaching so many people, it's very challenging to try and accommodate everyone. You're never going to win, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So really, and also I think in like social media has changed so much in the 15 years that I've been working in nightlife, right? Like I mentioned, my first party was via MySpace, right? And then we
Yeah.
had Facebook. We were using Facebook for events a lot. Now no one's using Facebook. Now we're using
Right.
Instagram. Then now people are going to TikTok, right? It's constantly changing, but also because of that, it's so fast. We can, pile up on something or someone, and then it can disappear again. And it's a lot more challenging. It requires more bravery and more investment to have a conversation,
Yep.
to work on a plan over time, to not say, oh, I'm going to just change this by saying something or putting something on a flyer or trying to troubleshoot or, try and not actually take accountability. And with Reunion, which we haven't talked about, but Elijah and I's space, our sliding scale.
Yeah.
It was a
community
beautiful,
event
beautiful
space.
space.
Oh my gosh.
It was.
Yeah.
And, it was very challenging because we were trying to surrender.
And I immediately think of the event that we collaborated on. You're welcome.
Yes.
Love.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. You're welcome, meaning like you're welcome. And also for Elijah and I was also like, you're welcome, because this is this like gift of space. And so just for some context for people listening, we have this space in Chicago it started out as like an experimental project. We wanted like a place to do our co-working space, event space, because there wasn't spaces where we really felt like aligned with our values or identities in Chicago. And we opened this large 3,000 square foot space, and there's hundreds of events that happen over time and a sliding scale rental price, and also developed more into like mentorship and investment with having more classes and workshops, and, you know, also an alternative space to bars and nightlife, where bars and clubs where queer people often are congregating for lack of other spaces.
Yeah.
And so that's what it was, and it really served a very important purpose for a long time. But it was also extremely challenging to navigate, because we were giving our time to that because of what it costs to run a space like that. And something that we came to realize was, and this is a really hard conversation to have, is that what sometimes the community expects, they don't understand what that would take. And again, with that emphasis on people facilitating space, having to have all the answers and provide everything, I think that a real important conversation that we need to be having in hospitality, broadly speaking, but also speaking of like these communities that we're referring to,
Absolutely.
is where is more of the relationship and responsibility sharing happening between the facilitators and the attendees?
That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Because, you know,
thousand%.
we're not going to, and we've seen how our industry has been so volatile.
Well, because it's not sustainable.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not, and I've learned that. That's why people burn out. That's why they leave these industries. And I've had to do a lot of soul searching. I've had to have those moments of decorum where I wanted to really have some other words.
Yeah.
But think about, okay, what is the bigger picture? What are you trying to accomplish? Having to like maintain some like my own self-respect when people don't always understand.
Well,
Like, is this the goal, or
Right.
is this a stepping stone to something greater?
Yes. Yeah, and you know, again, I think this is like when you want
And
to
either one isn't a negative. It's just
totally
different.
right.
It's just different.
And it's, you know, I think with like anything that's like a trend, right? If it's something that like, and trend does not necessarily have to be in like a trite way, right? Just like, you know, a movement or something that's happening. There's various people are coming to it with their own experiences. And like, I think we've unfortunately gotten way too far away from having real intimate conversation.
Oh, yeah, no.
And we're letting so much just play out on the internet, which has a place and is very important for a variety of reasons, for visibility, for accountability.
Yeah.
But it's often those nuanced conversations and the work and the investment that's being done to really, like, I think, shift culture.
Yeah, and people don't want to have those conversations because everyone's afraid
That's right.
to be pinned down or attacked if they don't come in already being like a wealth of knowledge themselves.
Right.
But I always find that it's better to ask the questions to someone who knows rather than trying to like make believe that you understand the situation.
Right.
I think we'd get ourselves out of a lot of trouble if people were empowered to ask questions
Right.
instead of just doing it.
Right.
And I also feel as if people need to be empowered to listen as well.
And read.
And
People literally don't read
Yeah.
menus.
So people need to be
signage,
empowered. Need to be empowered to receive.
Yeah.
You know,
And things are moving so quickly. And I think that people sometimes, like I said, it's that those expectations expect a lot. And I think it would be like sometimes I think we can like something and the two truths can exist at the same time, right? Multiple things can exist at the same time. You can go into a space, a restaurant, or we're talking about like parties, and be like, I love these things about it. It doesn't fulfill these other things for me. Where is that line for you where it feels good enough and it feels good to accomplish maybe what you need to get out of it without expecting it to be everything, right?
Right. So
It's a fine line to ride.
I haven't said this to you directly, but I'm going to say it to you now. I respect the absolute hell out of you and Elijah for everything that you were doing, everything that you represented, and everything that you created with Reunion. Because when we had, collaborated and I was in the space, it really made me think deeper in regards to the work that I do and that I believe in, because like I felt whole.
That's beautiful.
Because I like just being around just like so many diverse identities, but also it feeling like family. And but there was no expectation of it.
Yeah.
It's just like the door's unlocked. You want to sit over here and like, I think I sat there for like an afternoon, like on my laptop.
Yeah.
Elijah and I were just, like speaking every now and again. It's just like, you get just like, oh yeah, I'm great. Okay, great. And we just like kept going.
Be.
Yeah. You could just
Sometimes
be.
that's
and
what
that,
you need.
and
You just
that's,
want to be.
That's peaceful.
Exactly.
That's peace. And I realized on a societal level, I had never experienced that peace. And then when, reunion became to be no more, I was like, that's unfortunate. But then as I sat in it, I was like, damn, that's a bummer, because now I'm going to try and figure out in ways to create that peace through everything else.
Bingo. And that's exactly, Elijah would be so happy to hear that, because again, it goes, and thank you for sharing, that means a lot.
Absolutely.
That's exactly why we decided to say farewell, because we don't want to, and we don't actually find it to be actually very ethical for us to be these, we're trying obviously not to be gatekeepers, but at a certain point, if you don't evolve yourself out of something, right?
Yeah.
And we want people to have the exact reaction you did, which is, wait, this is missing. That was important to me. Oh, how can I create that? How can I be a part of creating that for myself first and foremost? But if I want to bring that like back in the world, it might not look like how we had done it, but that's not the point. It's about what were the things that made it feel different for you, that had that shift, and like how can you integrate it?
Yeah. And so,
I was about to be like,
not trying to drop a plug here, but I just want to like cheers it up to you and everything. I mean, I know that we're talking about reunion. I know that we're talking about Elijah. Elijah, hello. Hey, Elijah. I miss you. I hope you're doing well. I get your newsletter, so I know you're doing well. Okay. So, but honestly, this is amazing. And I'm not going to get emotional. I just like, it's all of these memories like just flowing back and be like, God damn.
Well,
God damn.
I haven't talked about reunion really, like, it closed. We closed it last November, and it's actually very hard for me. I haven't gone back. It's a wonderful story because, everything with intention, with how we ran that space. But, we did our farewell with events and a gallery show of archival, work from over the years. OTV, which is the organization Elijah's the executive director of, was our first event in the space. Was a screening when they were a tiny little organization, media organization.
Killing it now, and really has grown, and they completely took over the studio, so they have made it their place for classes. They are going to be doing screenings there. So it's a wonderful story that they grew and grew and grew, and eventually were able to absorb the space. It didn't become like Sweet Greens. It became like, it evolved.
Yeah,
it didn't transform into a Remember When.
Literally Hamburger Mary's.
Right.
God.
Right.
Oh.
I mean,
but yeah. So I
capitalism.
Think, yeah. But I think that there is still some bittersweetness there for me, because it did embody so many of these values we're talking about, the things that we want, right? And it also was really, really hard to do. And it took a lot from us, and we needed more resources to sustain it and for it to actually be what it wasn't. There were other ways that it needed to be more sustainable. And then you're going back to this cycle of how you accomplish, how do you make it possible for spaces to keep running, for people to be paid equitably, all the things that it takes. And of course, we're just talking about, we're talking a lot about money, right? And it goes back to some of the like challenges I think we have in our industry about, which I'm sure has been spoken on this podcast before, I would imagine, which is like alcohol sales, just alcohol just owning us.
Yep.
And we were trying to be a space that didn't, and, but then there's also the way the city's set up where, like, you're technically not supposed to have live entertainment without a PPA license.
That is correct.
And you're not supposed to charge a cover. So, how people that don't have major investors, that don't have ties with the city.
How can they do that?
Yeah, how can they consume entertainment in a way that's actually equitable for them?
Yes, and make it. And it's just, it can be very frustrating. Reunion was able to sustain it. We were able to kind of like get skirt around some things, but we found eventually that it was like, we in our roles and our visibility as that like grew, we can't really be skating around things. You need to do things proper. And so that's why I think we see spaces, we see them, eventually
come and go.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and as you've been talking, like, obviously I can pick up like there's a little bit of hurt there, but ultimately there's peace there.
Yes, and it was a really interesting time, which I haven't ever talked about publicly, but we had our opening of the closing, right? We did it because it was a few weeks long on 11/11, very intentionally, numerically very powerful. A time 11/11. It was also I had just done a pregnancy transfer, and so I was like, okay, this could be. This is really wild. I'm literally sending off one child to college and then trying to, start my life.
Yeah.
And I closed that out, and I found out that right after we closed Reunion that I was pregnant.
I saw that happening on the internet.
But I also had a miscarriage from that. So it was very hard to be have this story of, okay, I'm buttoning up this part of my life, but it's okay because I'm entering this parent era of my life. And then it felt good to be like, okay, and this was for a purpose, like closing this for a purpose. And then, that was a pregnancy that, didn't succeed. But then I got pregnant the next time, so it's okay. And then that's a whole other story. Yeah. But, it represented...
You got two fresh babies.
Yes, two fresh babies. But it was just such a wild time in my life to mark that transition. So that closing really represents like that time for me.
Yeah. So as we're wrapping up this portion of this conversation, I'd love to hear your thoughts on just the reality of what can seemingly be the divisive nature of the gay, queer, trans community. And I understand that you're fortunate, and not you specifically, but us and people in general are able to create their own sense of community. And I think the biggest thing for me, I'm using, Slow-Mo and also Reunion as primary examples here. It was just done with no ego. And that's something that it's difficult to find in traditional hospitality-centric environments because they're extremely catered to one aspect of that culture of said community.
And are you saying so focused on the people who are
right
are the facilitators or the
yeah, but it's the facilitators, but it's also the attendees because everything's so cliquish, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so are you wondering or at least what I'm getting is, are you observing that you see that kind of clickiness or
well, I'm saying that I haven't seen it in regards
those spaces,
to
but you've seen it in other spaces.
Hands down, absolutely.
Okay.
It's just not trying to call anyone out here, but the no fats, no femmes crew.
In the broadly and boys town and everything.
Exactly.
Because I'm thinking about in Chicago, our queer party culture, I think, is actually incredibly like rich and
Yeah.
it was, wonderful values that I think we overlap. And I'm really proud of Slow-Mo and Energy and Party Noir and the Black Agenda and, all these spaces that have done an amazing job at really like centering experience and wholeness and all of that. So I shout out to all my peers and friends. And I think even if we're not always maybe necessarily directly collaborating, we're learning from each other and supporting each other. And then
that begins to really start resonating on a larger scale.
Well, yeah, because you see how other people are doing things. I've noticed that like we started talking about, we will have a photographer in our language. We will have photography and videography on site. If you don't want to be documented, please let them know. Or you can reach out to us directly. And then I noticed that like Energies, the Small World family, they had started integrating that language. And that's wonderful. Like we want to be able to learn from each other and check in and have a connection. And
also not have people not show up because they don't want to be, just captured.
Right.
Like that,
and you can have some agency, but they're also in that important detail of what we were talking about before. That's on you if you don't want to be documented or if you need something from the space. Someone wrote me yesterday and they asked, because Slow-Mo was last night, and said, how to
I was like, how are you feeling today?
Great. It was so fun. Had a pain flare up, and she reached out and was like, is there any seating there? And I'm like, guess what? I can reserve a booth for you.
Yes.
So I just let them know in advance because it gets very crowded there at Sleeping Village. I was like, please put this sign down for this person. And, it's those little things. But again, that person reached out.
Yes.
They said, hey, I just need to check in about this and give us the opportunity as facilitators to help accommodate you, right? And it's that little piece. Yeah. Now, so important to what you're talking about, and I hope this is, sort of where you were going. What I'm talking about are things within these spaces where we are trying to accomplish things that we aren't seeing in the macro nightlife hospitality spaces. Again, that's a ton of pressure, though, and especially when you don't have the resources to do it.
Right.
So what we need to see more of is we need to see the people that have a lot of agency and power in these spaces, they need to start
making those changes, making those calls,
and bringing people in that have the experience to do that,
to
paying them
facilitate
what they need to do to do that for them. Don't try to do it on your own, because then that's when we get a bunch of like
half-ass shit,
like what we saw a few years ago with the like, we're gonna do all this commitment, and then you don't hear anything 2 years later. We're like, what happened with that equity plan, right?
That's literally, listen, you are hitting all of the heavy hitters of this season so far. All the things we've been talking about. It's just like. And okay, so I will say, like, not slow-mo parties in particular, but a lot of events that I would go to, I would be in like the same group of queers, and she is very white. And so we'd be going to all of these like spaces, and I would be having a really good time, but I'd be like, also there's not like a lot of like people that look like me in these spaces. And I was so grateful that Slow-Mo was a place where that wasn't like the predominant thing. Also like the change towards like femme and like women energy was also nice, because like I feel like in the dating world I wasn't valued in the same way as like non-binary white people. And it was hard to like be in those spaces. And like literally I was in a relationship with MJ, who was like all those fucking things in one. And it was like hard for me to even have a conversation with them about it. And it'd be weird when I'm like, oh, I don't really feel like going out. But with the changes from like these smaller events happening and people seeing it, I could see it rippling out and changing like just within the community. And then like meeting more queer Black femme people and like seeing that there are other opportunities out there and they're like starting to merge together. It was nice to see that change happen over the course of the 9 years that I've been here. So
that's beautiful.
The growth was everything for me.
Well, I think like that's why it's so beautiful that we have, Party Noir, we have Energy, what the Black Agenda has been doing to be able to say, like, this is this space that is centering and honoring and uplifting, you know, Black queer people, but especially like femme people and gender expansive people. And that you can also have slow-mo, and we should also, but that is, to me, is like also a space where we can say we are also uplifting, investing in Black, queer, and trans, femme, gender expansive people here too, because we should, as non-Black people, also be lifting up and celebrating those people in our community and in the music industry and in hospitality. It's a both.
Yes.
It's not an other. And so I think what happens to your question is when we want to see so much of that, we're closing in on one thing or one place to do that for us.
Yeah.
So what you're speaking to, which I think is so awesome, is once we start to see more and there's that empowerment, then you have something like Froskate, which is like, we just these like carefree Black girls and people who are out here who just want to skate, right?
I can't skate for shit, but I like the vibes.
Right, the vibes, right? But that can exist, and so that you can have different spaces that you can, you know, experience that and not expect that one space to give you everything.
Exactly.
And that's what I hope for, and what I wish folks could think of with slow-mo. We're not going to be able, I can't accomplish all of those things. And I, as like, you know, founder of that space, can only from what my framework is.
Exactly.
But who can I bring in to step back and give them that spotlight to do that? And, you know, I think it's also about consistency. Like the reason why that party is now, you know, 11 years is like, it has evolved, but also over and over again, the emphasis on joy, on softness, on how we treat each other has been so consistent. And the music, I think, really speaks to that and creates an environment for that. And then you see that over time, and it takes some time, and you can, you know, feel comfortable hoping that that's the kind of experience that you're going to have.
True.
Right.
Yep.
And as we've been, you know, diving in on this topic specifically, it's reminding me of my background, to where a lot of my Blackness has been in proximity to whiteness. And that is where, on a macro level, it's just like, well, damn, like, that's not for me. Like, it's not, it's just, it's not. But that's all you see.
Yep.
And it's just like, it's this weird,
like, you don't even know on a daily
Yeah.
basis how many times I have to be like, that's not for me.
Yeah.
Like, literally, someone was talking to me about 30 Rock the other day, and I was like, listen, this is not for me.
Not for me.
I get it. It's like,
But
a
treat
lot of
yourself.
people love
I
it.
know that. No, that's not 30 Rock. That's Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec,
See,
which is
I
a
can't even
bop.
tell you exactly.
Which is a
Parks
bop.
and Rec is a bop. Yeah, see, 30 Rock.
It's a pass for you.
It's a pass for me. Or like,
it's a pass. Yeah.
and I think it's a lot of it is, and I used to like not say anything and just be like, yeah, you know, whatever. But now I'm like, my boundary is making other people feel uncomfortable. Like recently, ye old queen died. Rip.
yeah.
And I was in a group chat with
Next.
friends from college,
Yes.
and they were talking about, it just so happened to be like the day that she passed away was the same day that one of my best friends, his brother, had passed away. And they were talking about like how they're like eating crumpets and drinking tea and like making soaps and stuff. And I responded, or maybe he's like, you did a lot of horrible things, and colonialism is how you built your wealth. And literally not a single text message has been sent in that group since then.
Yeah.
It has been 4 days.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what I'm not gonna do is like be in a conversation with like 3 white people and not say something when I literally am from a colony.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like, bruh.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what you're
Yeah.
talking about too is like that having room for those conversations.
Yeah, I'm not being confrontational. I'm
Right.
just like, hey, let's put this idea out
But
here.
it could be
Brr.
perceived as confrontational,
And
but that's
that's
not
why I
your
don't care
problem.
anymore.
But that's not your problem.
And I don't care.
Right? How someone reacts to your truth, that's their projection, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, and that's why I think it's with certain white people, they get very sensitive
Yes.
when you try to have the conversations because they feel attacked, even if they're not being attacked, and they're being asked to just like pay attention, Google.
Yes.
You literally use Google.
Or
read a room.
to explain.
Yes.
So, and I think like that's the moment when you have an opportunity. When someone says, I'm going to take the time to talk to you about this, they're already giving something to you. They're already giving you, maybe they're not, like you just said, having to explain or the education, right? And maybe you go and you do that on your own or not having the whole conversation.
Well, the acknowledgement is the respect.
Correct.
Yeah.
And, be grateful that that person gave you that opportunity. That's why I was saying earlier, like feedback is a gift. And it doesn't always feel like that, right?
Yeah.
But then process that on your own about like why that brought that up for you. It's okay for it to feel uncomfortable, right? Like some of the best things that happen and that make a shift in you will be because you were uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I think, that's again why like conversation's so important, because when you are there and you're sharing like that space and that body language and how you show that you are like receiving what someone is giving you. And that's why I say feedback is a gift, because you might not like the packaging or you might not understand it, but if you can remember, okay, there's something here that
the dialogue is empowering,
right?
Yes,
and that's
or
why
it should be.
That's why when you're asking about like that tension, maybe I don't always like feel great about how something's delivered, but then I look at it and I'm like, okay, what could I take from this? What could I learn from this? And that requires some maturity and that requires some sifting. But with that, I think it also is important to not automatically react, because what's also happening is the opposite reactions happening rather than being defensive. It's, oh, I'm going to act like I know everything about this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going to be this like, I'm putting a cab in my, whatever Instagram bio,
the
and
black
I'm on
boxes.
what land,
Yes,
saying what land
yes.
I'm on. Not that those are bad things.
But that also becomes
But that's just superficial.
gatekeeping,
Yeah.
And,
which doesn't help anyone.
yeah, and also I think, I don't know that people who are having that maybe like oppressed or marginalized experience or et cetera is even necessarily looking for that. You're looking for someone to like listen and let you be. You talked about peace earlier. I think a lot of people, that's probably more what they're wanting to feel, so that you don't feel like, as you were saying earlier, like, I have to think something's not for me over and over and over.
Yeah.
And sometimes things aren't for you.
And that's okay.
And that's
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And the
that's-
reverse is true as well, though.
Yeah.
Because when there's like something like we were talking about before with spaces that are more intentionally queer or more intentionally black, et cetera, you can even still honor and celebrate that and not participate.
Yep.
What a
Yeah.
concept.
110%.
I can be like, wow, I love what they're doing at Party Noir and not be there, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe I am, and like they've invited me personally.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I'm going to check in and say, how do you feel about that? I don't
this
have
for
to
me?
go. Or just say
Like-
like, hey, it's, I'm just checking in, but not in this way that is like so precious.
Right.
And then that's up to that person to really be honest with you, because you gave them the opportunity.
Exactly.
I just wish we could just have more conversations like that, because
Same.
people are getting too like
In their heads.
having siloed conversations. But again, it goes back to like, that feels like a lot of work, because in a way it is if you're not having a little bit of, discomfort in those conversations. And I really don't love bandwagon effect. Like
Yeah, no.
when people that do the piling on, I'm like, there's something suspect about this, because it takes more like time, energy, maturity. You have to do more research. You have to be more reflective. That's not going to come with an instant response.
No.
Right.
But sometimes the instant response is good. Sometimes you need to like have a moment, right, where you put someone on the spot, or sometimes you need to have that sort of a community response, right? I'm obviously referring to call out culture, right?
Yeah.
But at what point, right? Was there an opportunity given? Otherwise, what's the opportunity deserved? Because sometimes it's not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, and again, this is
We
all like
believe in
really
consequence culture over here.
it's, right. And
Yeah.
I mean, this is all really like nuanced stuff, but I think the defensiveness thing is just like where we really get in trouble, because then the listening stops.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that not everything is for everyone.
Correct.
And if it
that's
doesn't
okay.
exist, make it happen.
Yeah.
Right. Or right. If you are in the space and you're like, it's repeatedly not working for you, don't go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but what is it about, again, to your question around this, like maybe tension in spaces, specifically LGBT, is like, what is happening when we are expecting people that aren't empowered with the resources to carry these things out, but we're not holding the spaces accountable that could do that, right?
And we're always,
Yeah.
I feel like,
There's so
In
much
march-
infighting in regards
exactly,
to that.
that's what I was going to
Yeah.
say. Like
Yes.
the tension within communities, because everyone's out here fighting literally for their lives. That like trauma bonds people together, and then we other each other all the time. So it's really hard to like switch that around in your brain and be like, okay, it's okay to feel uncomfortable in situations. It's also okay to like understand where someone's coming from without that being your personal experience. And it's okay to like let them have that. And you don't, they might not want your comfort. They might not want your input. They just want to be like seen. And it took me a long time to get there, because I was out here just like, there's nothing for me, but there are things for me. You just have to leave your comfort zone, which should start with conversations and then move into the physical realm. But it takes people a long time to get there.
Well, and I think like,
agreed.
You know, we are looking to each other because we're like, we want it to, you know, we're looking, we're saying you're more like me, or like, this is a space I want it. I have this, or in some cases people might feel like they need it. Right. And we are like, you know, we're in a bar right now. We might be like, well, forget that. I'm not going to expect, for example, like, you know, I work in live entertainment. We haven't talked about venues a lot, but every venue in Chicago is owned by a white man, I think, for the most part. Actually, I think all of them. There's, you know, Hideout has 4 owners. One of them is a woman, Katie Tutton, shout out. But that's what the industry is, right? So then we look to that and like, people aren't questioning the security or the language on the website, or, you know, how they're approaching these things. Maybe sometimes, but the way that there will be
but not often enough.
Correct. And then, like, you know, the pressure is not applied there in the same way sometimes as it is in these community spaces where people are like making $200.
Well, because they would rather risk the people than risk the venue.
And that
and that's the hard truth about it. So
right, because you're like, well, I want to still go see this concert, right? Like, I'm not gonna, you know, or that it feels too big. Like, oh, I can't. And again, I just keep bringing that up because, and we are sitting in a bar space right now. Had these conversations we've had before, you know. When we're getting past quote unquote visibility, it's like, you know, what is the investment requiring from that person? You want their visibility, but what is that going to take from them? Like Elijah always talks about, like, it's expensive to show up this way, just to show up this way, right? You know, what we have to put in, or what you're talking about, maybe some of the ways where you have to show up in your jobs and your experiences, what that requires from you and that investment, right? Yeah. So it's just these are like industries that are been ran a certain way for a long time, and now they are being challenged. We're seeing some shifts, but it's just, you know, still a long way to go.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, 110%. Like, but let's not take away from the strides that have happened.
Absolutely.
Because I will always say this, like, as a Black woman, it's very hard for change to happen for you. And I think a lot of what people want takes a lot longer to get, and they're not used to having roadblocks. And so
you've mentioned a few times, you know,
that I'm a Black woman. Yes.
I was like, that's not the direction I was going.
Sorry,
but it's just like, as Black people in general, we do not expect change.
Yeah, no,
like that's not something that is even like, that's not even like a dim light on the mountaintop.
Yeah,
it's just like, if it happens,
it's a fucking miracle.
Shit.
Yeah. And so like, I'm excited to see the little bit of change that happened in the last 3 years be like overwhelmingly joyful for people who are still active in the service industry. Beautiful. And that's like, that's all I want is like baby steps. Just keep it moving forward. Don't take steps backwards. Just keep it moving.
I love that you said that because I think that's what we're talking about, of it not being like that trend or that bandwagon moment or that, because people are responding out of guilt or fear that they're going to be seen a certain way, right? And that's just all ego.
Yep.
And when you want to really be invested in it, it takes time. And sometimes it is small things, and it is that example setting for you know, your peers in the industry too. You know, and it takes courage to be that place or that venue or that person that is trying to make a shift. But yeah, that's all we're asking for us, just to keep it moving forward.
Just keep it going. Just a little bit.
And I feel like because, you know, we're hitting time, which it just like, it pains me every time
80
I have
minutes
to do this.
flew by, like
it just
nothing.
like nothing, because we could just
All day.
Shoot the shit.
keep going.
We can always do a part 2.
That's the vibe today.
That's the entire vibe in general. I just before I wrap into, you know, all the things that, you know, we know to do. I would love to hear any additional thoughts from you, Kristen, in regards to the evolution and your, you know, your hopes for hospitality-centric spaces, specifically within the queer identities.
This is a topic I could talk about all day. I mean, we are already like talking about it, but what I would like to see is, again, it's about power shifting. And that's big though, because we're talking about the small steps, but that is ultimately where the change is going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, we're already seeing a lot of that in lots of industries of like, oh, here's queer people, here's black people, et cetera. Right. But who's making the decisions? How are the decisions being made? And honestly, who's getting paid?
Yeah.
And how are they getting paid?
Right.
And how are they a part of this story? And it will not change until some power shifting changes.
Yeah.
So I wish that I could say it was some smaller things, but I think there's also smaller things that can happen and things that can happen right away to change it. But ultimately, what I've come to after 15 years in this industry is that honestly, we have to see some power shifting, right?
Yeah, 100.
And it can't just be the accolade, because the problem is we don't set those people up for success, those LGBTQ folks, those black folks up for success if we're like just using them as the poster child, right? You don't want to just hire a manager or any roles that might be in our industries,
Or
right?
award a...
That's kind of where I was going.
Yeah,
That's kind of where I was going.
Yeah,
It's like, don't just give the award or the
Right.
role, because then you're not setting those people up for success. We're
No.
not asking to not work hard. We're not asking for things that, you know, we haven't earned. But I think it's, you know, people, for change to really happen, a lot of it comes down to power shifting, and that means that some people have to. What is power shifting? It means you have to give some things up, or you have to shift, and that doesn't mean you have to be like, and now I'm closing my space, right?
No.
You don't. Sometimes that can even cause harm if people are like, well, okay, that wasn't perfect, but I really liked that for XYZ reasons. We've seen that happen too, right? So I think it's, again, like starting to think about that. And so when it comes to your very specific ask about with queer people, I think is like, who are we seeing there? How can it be integrated beyond just like the visibility? Of course, how can it be more beyond June or Pride Month, right? We're like Gay 365. It's not just during this month.
Right.
And again, it goes back to like who is a part of making those decisions. And, you know, I think now...
And how they're extending that table as well.
And how, right. But here's the thing, though, about the extension. It often requires work from that person. So that's why, like, in the corporate world, it's like they have the resource groups, like for, well, listen, I don't work in the corporate world, but my wife's in tech, like the black, groups, the LGBT groups, et cetera, women in tech, or whatever that is, right? It happens in our industries as well, of like, how you have these spaces so you can feel, you know, good, but then you're ending up like, I remember my wife like doing a presentation on Juneteenth, and she's like, I don't want to do this, you know, like why am I educating you on this? Sure, I'll do it, but are you going to pay me? Because that's outside of my job scope.
Literally.
So that's happening too.
Literally.
And I'm mentioning that because I think that's where a lot of times we're getting it wrong, is that the people that are holding that power, they're like, oh, I'll have you. We're going to have a celebration, or we're going to have a Juneteenth menu, right? I mentioned that because it's just came up, or whatever it is, or Pride or whatever. Is, again, are you asking someone to do more work? If you are, how are they being compensated for that? How are they getting the credit for that? Why is it that like in interviews it always has to be an owner, right? Why couldn't it be someone who works on the floor? Like
that's what we were saying in the like beginning in season 1. It's like we want to talk to all of these people from all the different
people.
Not the people who are running the show because they can say whatever they want and not be held accountable.
And they're also guided.
Yes.
In their response. And
we don't want
it's
none
just
of
like
that
we
shit.
all know how media works. I mean,
sure do.
Yeah. So, and that is why we have the format here that we do, because we don't want anyone to feel like they can show up here and it's very rehearsed. It's very buttoned up. It's just like, because the industry is not buttoned up.
No. And that's the thing.
I was just like,
why are we pretending that it's not
I
a
was
mess?
like, what are you talking about? I was just like, it's an absolute fucking shit show out here.
Yes.
And
all the dumpsters are on fire.
Exactly. It's just like, it's a wildly fractured industry. Yes. And, there was a significant hope, when things started coming back, that it would come back better. But the reality is, it's just like, it has come back the same, if not worse.
Yeah.
And that is just the fact of the matter.
Yeah, and to get really specific about it with your question around like what to see for spaces, it would be the investment. It's like we don't have to do the whole song and dance. Like, how can you invest and get out of the way, right? Like,
true.
I mean, like there's funding, there's TIFF money, there's grants, there's all kinds of ways that cities show and industries show what they actually care about. I hate to bring it back down to money, but to be able to open these spaces, to be able to pay people what they deserve. Right. It kind of comes down to that. And you can do things, there are other ways to do things. We don't always have to do things the way that they've always been done. And if we're going to make change, then we're have to do things differently.
Exactly.
So that's all we're saying.
Yes.
Small ass. Put us in charge.
You're like, all of that is to say, put us in charge.
But then it's like part 2 is talking about like what happens when we get in this position. So we start gatekeeping. We won't go there. We're gonna stop. We're gonna
put a pin in that.
Put a pin, and then we'll part 2.
But Kristen, thank you.
You're welcome.
Literally for like everything, for joining us, for showing me peace personally within my identity. Also, just like really being a just transparent cultural force.
For being basically my Tinder before Tinder.
That is true.
For the first like queer event that I ever went to in Chicago, for helping me meet basically all my fucking friends now as an adult. Yeah.
No. So
here's for saying, that the IRL spaces matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Being together,
Yes.
it really does matter.
Yeah. So how do we find you?
Well, these days with 2 babies strapped to me in my house, but it's changing real soon. But I feel very committed.
And don't forget about your dog.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, of course, Demi. I have a beautiful dog, husky shepherd named Demi.
Yes.
Also Gemini. All 3 of my children, my fur child and my twins, are all Geminis. And, Gemini is the sign of the twins, so it's really wild.
Yeah. Double Gemini.
Yeah. But, of course, you can find me at Slow-Mo, which is at Sleeping Village monthly. And sometimes we do some other things around the city. It's Slow-Mo Party on Instagram. And then I'm Kristen Kaza, Kristen Kaza, Kaza on Instagram. That's a good way to find me. I'm hoping to get into maybe the TikTok realm, but I'm 37. I'm a vintage.
Listen,
queer,
I'm 32 and I'm not. I know.
I like video though.
I like to watch it, but I'm tired.
Don't do that.
Are you trying to do TikTok?
No, I'm just saying no.
Okay.
But
part 3.
Are you talking about me bleaching my eyebrows and putting it on the internet, having a manic moment?
No,
because that was amazing.
I was talking about
that should have been on
my
TikTok.
DMs are on fire from you often. From
on Instagram, sending you the real. Yeah, but am I doing them myself?
Fair.
No.
All right. Well, then that's going to be on hold for production. So, Biko production crew, watch out.
Watch out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we're gonna have a whole thing coming in heavy on season 4.
Oh my God.
But on my end, I obviously want to thank you again, Kristen. Also give all of the acknowledgement to our friends here at Blind Barber Chicago for hosting this wildly necessary conversation. Also, shout out to Miss Perfect Pour for bringing us some wonderful beverages in lieu of the Garnet crew. Also, shout out to the entire production team. Thank you so much, Amanda, for stepping in. Thank you so much, Max, for everything that you do to keep us on task, especially when you do the wrap it up. It's my favorite. And my name is Justin Arnett Graham, and you can find me on Instagram at This Is Biko.
And my name is Nariba Shepherd. You can find me on Instagram at REBARU, Rebaru. And we'll smell you later.
And shout out to you two for hosting this podcast. It's awesome. We need it. And you're doing the work. You're doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you're having fun while you're doing it. That's
Yes.
very
I mean,
important.
Yeah, I was like, I wasn't expecting that. I was like, you're gonna make me cry. So on that note, peace.
Well,
Bye.
yeah, Ben and
Yes.
Jerry said if it's not fun, why do it? We're Vermonters. We gotta
Ben
shut
and
up, Ben and Jerry's. And we're still
Damn.
having fun, right?
Okay, yes. Later.
Cabbage cheese, cold hollow.
Yes.
Give me that cider.
Woo. All right.